Have you ever felt that strange emptiness when you scroll through endless images of smiling faces, curated moments, and perfected lives, sensing something profoundly missing not in what you see, but in what you cannot express? There is a silence that lives in certain souls, a silence that refuses to be photographed, captured, or displayed for the consumption of wandering eyes. This is not the silence of absence, but the silence of presence, so complete, so utterly full, that no image could ever contain it. I once met a woman at a library on a rainy afternoon, the kind of afternoon where the world seems to pause and breathe more slowly, where the smell of old books mingles with the scent of wet earth coming through open windows. She told me she had not posted a photograph of herself in 7 years, and when she said this, there was no defiance in her voice, no pride, no apology, just a simple statement of fact. Like saying the sky is blue or water flows downward, her eyes held the depth of ancient forest, layers upon layers of living growth, mysteries that words could never quite reach. And when I asked her why she had made this choice, she paused for a long moment, looking past me toward the rain-streaked windows. And then she simply said, "I am too vast to be reduced to a single frame, too full of contradictions and complexities, and quiet joys that no photograph could ever capture." Those words have echoed in me ever since, like the call of a bird that flies beyond the horizon, reminding me that some truths cannot be captured, cannot be frozen in time, cannot be translated into the language of pixels and algorithms, but can only be lived, breathed, experienced in the raw, unfiltered fullness of the present moment. If you have ever felt this way, if you have ever sensed that your inner world is too expansive, too sacred, too quietly magnificent to be translated into digital performance, then you understand the spiritual psychology we are exploring today. This is not about superiority or judgment of those who share their lives digitally, not about condemning or dismissing the very real connections and beauty that can emerge through social media. This is about recognizing a different kind of consciousness, a way of being that Whitman himself would have understood deeply, the soul that refuses to perform its existence because it is too busy actually living it, too absorbed in the texture and taste and temperature of real life to pause and frame it for an audience. The most powerful secret Whitman understood about presence and authenticity is not found merely in his cascading verses, his long rhythmic lines that seem to breathe with the very pulse of existence, but in the way he perceived the divine pulsing through every unwitnessed moment, every private breath, every experience that needed no audience to validate its holiness, its inherent worth, its place in the vast tapestry of being. Whitman celebrated the self, yes, but not the self as performance, not the self as carefully curated image designed to impress or inspire or provoke envy. He celebrated the self as cosmos, as infinite interior landscape, as the universe becoming conscious of itself through solitary walks along beaches where no one else treads, through quiet observations of workers and wanderers who will never know they were seen, through moments that belonged only to the experiencer and the eternal witness that lives in all things. When he wrote, "I celebrate myself and sing myself," he was not speaking of broadcasting the self to gain approval, likes, followers, the shallow validation of strangers who know nothing of your actual struggles and joys. He was speaking of the profound spiritual act of recognizing one's own divinity without needing external confirmation, of knowing your own worth, not because others reflect it back to you, but because you feel it humming in your bones, pulsing in your blood, breathing in your lungs, the simple, undeniable fact of your existence as a miracle that needs no documentation to be real. Today, I will reveal Whitman's most liberating vision about authentic presence in an age of constant display, and how this consciousness can completely expand your understanding of what it means to truly inhabit your own life, to be fully present in your own skin, to walk through this world with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are complete, without needing to prove it to anyone. We will explore why some souls instinctively resist the impulse to document and display, not out of fear or disconnection or some kind of social dysfunction, but out of a deeper connection to something that social media, by its very nature, cannot touch, cannot reach, cannot commodify or consume. This is about the spiritual psychology of those who live so fully in the moment that the thought of interrupting that moment to capture it, to frame it, to prepare it for public consumption, feels like a betrayal of the experience itself, like breaking a spell, like shattering something sacred and irreplaceable. In a forest clearing on a summer morning, Whitman once observed a carpenter working alone, shaping wood with steady hands that knew their work so intimately that they moved almost without thought, singing quietly to himself, completely absorbed in the rhythm of creation, in the dance between vision and material, between possibility and form. No one was watching, no one was documenting, no one was there to witness or applaud or validate that this moment mattered. And yet, in that moment, Whitman saw the entire poetry of the universe concentrated in this single human being, living fully, creating genuinely, existing without the need for an audience or approval. The carpenter was not performing carpentry for some imagined viewer. He was being carpentry. He was the wood and the hands and the song all at once, inseparable, whole, complete in himself and in his work. This is the consciousness we are exploring. The person who does not post photographs is often like this carpenter, so present in their own experience that the idea of stepping outside of it to perform it for others feels absurd, even painful, even impossible, without losing the very essence of what makes the experience valuable. They are not hiding from life or from connection. They are not afraid of being seen or known. They are simply too engaged with the actual texture of existence, with the rough grain of reality, with the infinite details that make up each moment, to pause and frame it for consumption by strangers who will scroll past it in seconds. Their spiritual practice, whether they name it as such or not, whether they even recognize it as a practice, is the practice of undivided presence, of bringing all of yourself to each moment without reservation or documentation. When you are truly here, when you are fully inhabiting this breath, this sensation, this moment of connection with another soul, or with the wind moving through leaves, or with the taste of food or the feeling of water on your skin, the impulse to document dissolves because documentation requires a split, a fundamental separation between the experiencer and the experience. It requires you to step out of the river to photograph the river, and in doing so, you are no longer in the river, no longer wet, no longer moved by the current, no longer part of the flow. You have become an observer rather than a participant, and something essential is lost in that transition. This is not a judgment of those who share their lives online, not a condemnation of the millions who find genuine meaning, connection, creativity, and joy in digital sharing. Many do so with authentic intention, with real artistic vision, with the sincere desire to connect and inspire and build community across distances that would otherwise separate us. Social media can be a tool for profound connection, for spreading beauty and truth, for organizing movements and supporting each other through difficult times. But there is a particular spiritual psychology in those who feel called to privacy, to silence, to the invisible life. And understanding this psychology can help us all navigate the question of how to be authentic in a world that increasingly equates authenticity with visibility. These are often souls who have touched something so real, so visceral, so utterly present that they instinctively protect it from the fragmenting nature of digital performance, from the way that sharing an experience can somehow dilute it, can take something that was whole and break it into pieces for consumption. They understand, perhaps without articulating it in these exact words, that the moment you frame an experience for external consumption, the moment you think about how it will look to others, how many likes it might get, what people will think or say or feel when they see it, you alter the experience itself in subtle but significant ways. The sunset becomes not the sunset but content. The meal becomes not nourishment but aesthetic. The embrace becomes not connection but documentation of connection. The child's laughter becomes not pure joy but a moment to be captured and shared. And something essential, something sacred, something irreplaceable is lost in that translation, in that transformation from lived experience to performed experience. Whitman understood this intimately in his own strange prophetic way. His poetry is full of moments that are unwitnessed except by consciousness itself, by the great eye of awareness that needs no external validation. The child asleep in its cradle, breathing softly in the darkness. The farmer in his field, hands deep in earth, communion with soil and seed. The prostitute dragging her shawl through midnight streets, carrying her own dignity despite the world's judgment. The wounded soldier dying far from home, his last thoughts known only to himself and to whatever vastness might receive them. He did not need these people to perform their existence for him or for anyone else. He witnessed them in their raw, unedited, unperformed humanity. And in that witnessing, in that pure attention without agenda or judgment, he found the divine pulsing through everything, through every circumstance, through every choice, through every way of being human in this strange and beautiful world. The person who does not post photographs often carries this same quality of witnessing, this same capacity for attention that sees the sacred in the ordinary, precisely because they are not trying to make the ordinary extraordinary for an audience. They are simply letting the ordinary be what it is, which is already extraordinary when experienced without the filter of performance, without the constant question of how this will look to others, without the need to curate or edit or improve reality to make it shareable. They are practicing a radical acceptance of what is, as it is, in all its messy, imperfect, unfiltered glory. Now I want to ask you something, just between us, something I have been reflecting on deeply since I encountered Whitman's words about authentic presence and the unwitnessed life, about the value of experiences that belong only to you and to the eternal moment in which they occurred. In what moment of your life did you feel so completely absorbed, so utterly present, so fully alive that the thought of documenting it, of pulling out your phone to capture it, would have felt like a violation of its sacredness, like breaking a spell that could never be cast again? I know you may have never shared this feeling with anyone because who could understand something so subtle, so profoundly personal, so difficult to articulate in a world that seems to believe that if you didn't photograph it, it didn't really happen? But here, in this space, in this community of fellow seekers, you are truly understood. Your experience is not only valid but holy, not only real but revelatory, not only personal but universal in its particular way. When you felt that moment, whether it was watching rain fall on a quiet afternoon, holding someone you love in complete silence, creating something with your hands that no one else will ever see, sitting in stillness while the world rushed past, walking alone through a landscape that took your breath away, or any of the 1,000 other ways that presence can bloom in a human heart, you were touching the consciousness we are exploring today, the awareness that some experiences are too precious to share, too complete to interrupt, too sacred to commodify. And I believe your reflection on this could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today, to know they are not alone in valuing presence over performance, depth over display, being over seeming. If something in you feels called to share, complete this sentence in the comments below. My experience with authentic presence taught me that, Wenshai, your sincere reflection, your honest words, your vulnerable sharing can illuminate the path for many other seekers who are walking this same road, asking these same questions, trying to find their way in a world that seems to demand constant visibility as the price of existence. Take a deep breath right now and allow yourself to feel, not think, the answer that emerges from your heart, from that quiet place inside you that knows truth without needing to explain it. If you prefer to simply reflect in silence, to hold this question in your own private consciousness without sharing it with anyone, that too is a profound way of honoring your journey, a valid and beautiful choice that deserves respect. This space holds room for all expressions of the sacred, including the expression of silence itself. There are different ways this consciousness manifests in those who choose not to post photographs, different flavors of this same basic impulse toward privacy and presence, and understanding these variations can help us see the spiritual diversity within what might seem like a single choice. Some are the mystics of the ordinary, those who find such profound depth in everyday moments that sharing them feels like cheapening them, like trying to explain a dream or describe a color to someone who has never seen. They are the ones who can spend an hour watching light move across a wall, finding in that simple play of illumination and shadow an entire meditation on time and change and the nature of perception. They can lose themselves in a conversation with a stranger, discovering universes in another person's eyes, in the particular way they laugh or pause or search for words. They understand that the most transformative experiences are often the quietest, the most unspectacular, the kind that would never make interesting content, but that change everything about how you see and feel and understand your place in existence. Then there are the protectors of intimacy, those who feel that certain experiences, especially those involving deep connection with others, are too precious to expose to the public gaze, too vulnerable to risk the judgment or misunderstanding of strangers. They understand that intimacy requires privacy, that some loves, some friendships, some family bonds are diminished when displayed, when turned into performance, when subjected to the scrutiny and comparison that social media inevitably brings. Their refusal to post is an act of reverence for the sanctity of relationship, a way of saying that some connections are too important to risk for the sake of likes and comments. There are also the resistors of narrative control, those who reject the pressure to curate a coherent, attractive, successful-looking life story, who understand that real life is messy, contradictory, full of moments that do not fit into any coherent narrative or any marketable brand. They refuse to edit their existence into a palatable story for public consumption, to pretend that their life makes more sense than it does, to hide the struggles and doubts and failures that are just as much a part of their journey as the victories and joys. They would rather live the chaos than perform the order, rather be authentically confused than performatively certain. And then there are the guardians of inner space, those who instinctively know that constant external focus depletes the inner world, that always looking outward for validation and connection leaves no energy for the inward journey that is equally necessary for a whole and balanced life. They protect their solitude, their reflection time, their capacity for deep thought and contemplation by limiting their participation in the attention economy. They understand that awareness requires spaciousness, that creativity needs silence, that wisdom emerges from the depths and not from the surface. But this path is not without its challenges, its struggles, its moments of doubt and difficulty. The person who does not post often faces subtle and not so subtle pressure to participate, to prove their existence through visibility, to demonstrate that they are living a full and meaningful life by showing evidence of that life to others. They may be accused of being antisocial, detached, or even superior. They may feel isolated in a world where connection increasingly seems to require digital performance. There is the challenge of invisibility in a culture that equates visibility with value, that assumes if you are not seen, you do not matter. If you do not document your experiences, they might as well not have happened. This can create a kind of existential doubt, a fear that by choosing privacy, they are somehow opting out of life itself, missing opportunities, becoming irrelevant in a world that moves at the speed of the scroll. There is also the challenge of misunderstanding, the way people may interpret their silence as disinterest, their privacy as coldness, their refusal to share as having nothing to share. The world often struggles to understand that fullness can look like emptiness from the outside, that the richest inner life may have the quietest outer expression. And there is the practical challenge of existing in systems that increasingly require digital presence for professional success, for social connection, for even basic participation in community. The person who resists posting must navigate a world designed for those who do, finding alternative ways to connect, to be known, to participate, without compromising their spiritual need for privacy. The transformation that occurs when someone consciously chooses this path, when they stop trying to reconcile their need for privacy with the world's demand for visibility, is profound and often deeply healing. It begins with a recognition, often sudden and startling, that the discomfort they feel when asked to share photographs or post updates is not social anxiety or personal failing, but spiritual discernment. It is their soul telling them that this particular form of engagement does not serve their deepest nature. This recognition brings immense relief, like finally being allowed to breathe after holding your breath for years. They stop trying to force themselves to be someone they are not. They stop apologizing for their privacy. They begin to honor their need for the unwitnessed life as a legitimate spiritual path. As they settle into this choice, they often find that their inner world becomes richer, more textured, more vivid. Without the constant pull to externalize their experiences, they can sink more fully into them. They notice more. They feel more. They remember more, not through photographs, but through embodied memory, through the imprint experiences leave on their consciousness. They develop a different relationship with time, one that is less fragmented, less interrupted, more flowing. They begin to experience their life as a continuous stream rather than a series of moments to be captured and posted. And perhaps most significantly, they develop a profound trust in their own experience as sufficient unto itself, not needing validation, not needing witnesses, not needing to be translated into any language other than the language of lived sensation and quiet knowing. The wisdom Whitman offers us here is deeply practical, even as it is profoundly spiritual. It teaches us that authenticity is not about revealing everything, but about being true to what genuinely moves through us. If posting photographs feels natural and joyful, if it emerges from genuine creative expression or desire to connect, then it is authentic. But if it feels like obligation, like performance, like a betrayal of the actual experience, then refraining is the authentic choice. Whitman teaches us to trust our own nature, to honor our own rhythms, to recognize that there is no single right way to be human. Some of us are meant to be visible, expressive, outward-facing. Others are meant to be private, internal, inward-dwelling. Both are necessary. Both are sacred. Both contain the divine. The practical application of this wisdom is learning to distinguish between genuine desire and social pressure, between creative expression and compulsive performance, between healthy sharing and the depletion that comes from constantly externalizing your inner world. It means developing the courage to be countercultural when your soul requires it, to say no to visibility when visibility does not serve you, to trust that your life is valid, even if no one sees it but you. It means cultivating rich inner practices that nourish you without needing external recognition, whether that is meditation, writing for yourself alone, creating art no one else will see, having conversations that will never be recorded, experiencing beauty that will never be photographed. It means building relationships with people who understand and respect your need for privacy, who do not require you to prove your experiences or your love through digital display. Yet there are traps even in this path, ways the ego can distort what is genuinely spiritual into something that serves separation rather than connection. One trap is spiritual superiority, the belief that choosing privacy makes you more evolved, more conscious, more authentic than those who post. This is the ego disguising itself as spirituality. True spiritual privacy carries no judgment of others. It is simply a personal truth, not a universal prescription. Another trap is using privacy as avoidance, hiding not because you are so present, but because you are so afraid. Not because your inner world is full, but because you are running from genuine connection. The question to ask is whether your privacy serves your aliveness or your fear. Does it make you more open to direct experience, or is it a way of controlling and limiting experience? There is also the trap of romanticizing isolation, believing that solitude and silence are inherently more spiritual than community and expression. Whitman's vision was not of isolation, but of profound connection, not of withdrawal, but of total immersion in life. The person who does not post is not necessarily more connected to life. They are simply connecting in a different way, and they must be honest about whether that way truly serves their deepest flourishing or simply protects them from vulnerability. What Whitman ultimately invites us to recognize is that the spiritual life, the authentic life, is the one that integrates all aspects of our being without hierarchy, without denial, without performance. The person who does not post photographs is not rejecting the body, the world, or other people. They are actually honoring these so completely that they refuse to reduce them to images. They are saying yes to full embodied presence, yes to the messiness of real life, yes to experiences that cannot be captured or explained. They are living the paradox that Whitman understood so well, that the most universal truths are found in the most particular, private, unshared moment, that the divine is not in the extraordinary, but in the ordinary, when the ordinary is fully inhabited. That you do not need to broadcast your existence to validate it, because existence itself, the sheer fact of being here, breathing, sensing, experiencing, is already complete, already whole, already infinitely valuable. The photograph or the lack of photograph changes nothing about this essential truth. You are here. You are alive. You are conscious. This is the miracle. This is the sacred. This is what Whitman saw and celebrated in every human being, whether anyone else saw them or not. The synthesis of all we have explored is this understanding that spirit and matter, inner and outer, privacy and connection, are not opposites, but parts of a greater whole. The person who does not post is not disconnected from the world, but connected in a way that honors their particular nature. They are not rejecting technology or community, but choosing how they engage with both, in a way that preserves their spiritual integrity. They are living proof that there are many paths to authenticity, many ways to be fully human, many expressions of the divine impulse to exist consciously and completely. Whitman's great gift was showing us that the sacred is everywhere, in every person, in every choice, in every way of being, whether witnessed by thousands or witnessed by none. The woman in the library who told me she was too vast to be reduced to a single frame was not being arrogant. She was being accurate. We are all too vast to be reduced to any single frame, any single image, any single story. Some of us express this vastness outwardly, others protect it inwardly. Both are necessary. Both are beautiful. Both are expressions of the same infinite consciousness, recognizing itself through infinite forms. The person who posts and the person who does not post are both engaged in the sacred work of being human, of finding their way through this brief, mysterious, overwhelmingly beautiful existence. There is no right way. There is only your way, discovered through deep listening, through honoring what is true for you, through trusting that your soul knows what it needs, even when the world tells you something different. As we come to the end of this reflection, I want to speak directly to you, to the part of you that has perhaps felt strange or isolated or misunderstood for not wanting to share your life digitally. You are not broken. You are not antisocial. You are not missing out. You are honoring something profoundly important, something that our current culture desperately needs, even if it does not always recognize or value it. You are protecting the unwitnessed life, the private soul, the moments that belong only to you and to eternity. You are keeping alive the possibility that experiences can be complete without documentation, that love can exist without display, that beauty can be encountered without being captured. This is sacred work. This is spiritual practice. This is your contribution to the world, even if the world never sees it. And I also want to speak to those who do share their lives online, who find joy and meaning in that sharing. You too are engaged in sacred work. You are building connections, inspiring others, creating beauty, expressing your truth. The key is always authenticity, always discernment, always the question of whether what you are doing serves your deepest aliveness. We need both. We need those who speak and those who are silent. We need those who share and those who protect privacy. We need all the ways that consciousness can express itself through human form. If these words about authentic presence and the spiritual psychology of privacy have touched that quiet place in your heart that has long sought expression, if you recognize yourself in this exploration of the unwitnessed life, then I invite you, not as someone who knows more but as a fellow traveler on this path, to join this community of seekers. By subscribing to this channel, you become part of a circle of souls who value depth over display, presence over performance, who understand that the richest life is not always the most visible life. You will have access not just to weekly reflections inspired by Whitman's timeless wisdom about authentic living, but also to a space where your journey toward genuine presence is honored in all its complexity and beauty. I know that the feeling of being different in a world that demands constant visibility can be lonely and confusing. This channel exists to remind you that you are not alone in your perception, that your choice to live privately is not just valid, but valuable. When you subscribe, you join others who, like you, feel deeply, see clearly, and seek a spirituality that honors the invisible as much as the visible, the silent as much as the spoken. I have spent many years studying and living Whitman's teachings about presence and authenticity, not as a distant expert, but as someone who, like you, continues to learn and grow every day. This reflection is just the beginning. If it resonated with you, subscribe so we can continue this exploration together of the magnificent, mysterious, utterly sacred, unwitnessed life that Whitman invites us to discover. Your presence here, whether visible or invisible, whether you comment or simply watch, whether you share or keep this to yourself, is a gift. Thank you for being exactly who you are, for honoring your nature, for choosing presence over performance, for keeping alive the possibility of authentic existence in a world that too often confuses visibility with value. May you walk your path with confidence, knowing that your private joys, your unposted moments, your undocumented life is completely, utterly, infinitely enough.